Coming up, making accessible content on the cheap and securing your home accessibly.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hello. Welcome to another Double Tap. I am Stephen Scott.
And I am Shaun Preece. Oh, it's like that was rehearsed. Hello, Stephen.
I know, and it wasn't, because nothing is at Double Tap. Nothing is rehearsed. Listen, yes, today we're going to talk about a mixture of different things. I want to talk about home security.
So do I. Yes, definitely. I've had an intruder on my cameras. More coming up soon.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that. Thinking who it might be. Also, we're going to talk about content creation because, there's loads of people out there now wanting to start podcasts and all the rest, but everything's kind of going up a gear. When you think about it, everything's going up a gear. But I think the barrier to getting into this stuff, to making podcasts, to making YouTube videos, is actually coming down. So the bar comes down, but the desire goes up.
Yes.
And it's probably because of the fact that you can use such simple technology to do it. And I want to talk a little bit about this because there's a lot of rubbish that flies around. Oh, you got to buy the best thing. And no, you don't. Stop this rubbish.
All right. Don't get ranty already. We haven't even started yet. Okay.
Well, a minute in, I'm off. But before we talk about that, and we're going to hear from a special guest today, as part of the Your Tech Reports podcast, which you'll have heard about. Some of you have heard about for the first time here on Double Tap, featuring, of course, our very own Marc Aflalo, who's
Aflalo. Thank you. I missed that.
Well, that's his show. And as part of it, he was kind to offer me a seat at the table while he spoke to Stephen Robles, who's a content creator himself. He works for Riverside, which is the platform we use to do this show. And he also creates his own show called The Primary Tech Podcast, another one to subscribe to. Yeah, another podcast, because that's what the world needs, more podcasts. So, yes, he is going to be talking a little bit about content creation, what he's using, the tools he's using, some of the stuff he's playing with. And I think you're going to be quite surprised, Shaun, at the microphone that he favors above all.
Really? Yeah, no, I'm really interested in microphones because there was, for the longest time, it had to be the most expensive, posh microphone you could get. That was always the advice when I started. That has changed a lot.
It has. But also, in case you're wondering, Stephen's not blind, but we don't care about that, right? Because look, at the end of the day, we live in a world with other people, and we are people first at Double Tap.
Okay, calm down. Step down off your soapbox. No, the important thing here, the topic in discussion, is content creation.
Yeah.
Right?
And this guy's very successful. His podcast is extremely successful.
Yes.
So basically, we're looking for hints and tips here, Shaun. That's what we're trying to figure out ways of
trying to up our game.
And I will say as well, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, hello, YouTube. Hello, wonderful people. I just want to say, same to anyone who listens on podcast, although it's more likely, I think, you do this on podcast. And we really appreciate it when you do. But, it would be great if you can subscribe, because a lot of people watch the show on YouTube, but don't subscribe on YouTube. And I kind of understand why, because I must admit, I am terrible for not subscribing to things either. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I'll watch loads of videos. And what'll annoy me is sometimes I'll really like someone, and I think that guy's brilliant, or that girl's fantastic. I must go back and, find that person again, but I can't remember their name. And if I just subscribed at the time, I wouldn't have had that problem.
Yeah, no, you're just a terrible person, Stephen Scott. I always subscribe. It's so easy to do in the YouTube app. Well, you just swipe through, subscribe, double tap. That's it.
I didn't say it's difficult. I just said I don't do it.
Well, do it.
All right, fine.
That being said, hello, double tappers. If you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All you do is swipe, and hit double tap, subscribe. There you go. What's your problem?
Sorry.
Yes, that'd be great. But look, yes, we'll talk about content creation a little bit. I want to talk about home security first, because I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here, which is not telling too many tales out of school, but I want to mention it.
Mm-hmm.
So my mum's not doing too great at the moment, and my mum and dad are living together, and they're doing okay, but they could do with some help, and we're going to be working on getting them some help into the house. To help them make sure they get their meals properly, make sure that the food is in date, and the cupboards and all that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of stuff going on that we have to deal with. And it's a difficult time, right? Because there's a lot going on. You're trying to work, you're trying to do the show, you're trying to do everything else, and you want to be there for them, but sometimes you just can't be. And what's amazing about the technology we have today is how you can have something in someone's home that can allow you to connect with them without actually being there. And there's loads of tools for this, right? There's loads of ways to do it now, and there's definitely a lot of specialist systems people can employ. I mean, there's one system we have installed in the house which is literally, it's like an Apple Watch, but it's not an Apple Watch, but it's a watch with a big button, essentially. There's no clock face on it. It's just a button. And if anything goes wrong, she just hits that button, or my dad hits that button, and they immediately get through to emergency services. They get assistance. And even if they're not able to verbally explain the issue, help will be sent. And they know exactly who's getting in touch. So these specialist services are brilliant. It does not cost a huge amount of money. I think it's like $100 a year. It is worth every cent, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. It's a wearable panic button, isn't it? You can also get them in the form of a pendant as well to wear around your neck. Yeah.
And I remember when I went in, it's so funny, because I remember when I went in, the amount of resistance from my parents, and this is echoed from family to family, right? The amount of resistance you get. And then it had gone in, and I was away on traveling. I think I was down in London for something, and something happened. And my dad fell ill, and my mum pushed the button, and just her reaction to what happened next was just incredible, and how immediately she bought into this. It was like, okay, this cannot go away. And at first it was like, I don't want this in my house.
I don't need this. Yeah.
And then it went from that to, I hope you've paid for this because we need this. And it was great to hear that. Once you've got that adoption, it's great. But there are sometimes you need to, I think, sometimes put in technology which could be considered intrusive. And I'm talking about cameras. When you have to put cameras into someone's house, it's not your own house. I mean, I don't know if I'd want them in my house,
No, of course not.
Because, essentially these cameras now, they can hear what's going on as well as see what's going on. So, they can obviously track motion and all of that stuff. So, you can feel a little bit like you're constantly being watched. But it's come to the point where we're going to have to do that with my mum and dad just to make sure everything's okay. Yeah. And so I thought about specialist solutions, but I thought maybe there's a cheaper option. Maybe there's a way of doing this with the technology that's out there. And I immediately thought of your experience you had with the Blink cameras, the Blink cameras that you've got. Is it the Blink Minis?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I have I swapped out my Ring doorbell for the Blink doorbell, and then I went the whole way and bought a set of Blink Mini security cameras. Now, these are for outside. Obviously, I've got one on the shed here facing the house, 2 on the house, 1 on the garage. I've got them all over, but I think they're excellent.
Incredible. So you very kindly let me intrude on you.
I did.
So I could test it out and see what it was like. Because I wanted to know how it worked, and I was in particular keen to know if I could access. In my head, I wanted to be able to access it on the Mac, right? So I could sit at my desk and just access the cameras if I needed to. I guess in my head, I was thinking that then I could see it, bigger on the screen, right? I suppose that was my thinking. But then, of course, there's the app as well, and there's an iPad app and all of that. So there's other ways to do it.
Wherever you are, you just want quick, easy access to bring up a security camera and check on it, right?
Well, and also I was thinking, do I need a separate account for me and them, right? So would they need their account to get it? But actually, I thought, hang on a minute, if it's me that's going to be accessing these cameras. Yeah. So really, everything's just going to end up on my account anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, that aside, I bought one of the Blink Mini. I've got the box here. I'll show you. Always watch it on the radio.
That's good.
But for YouTube fans, you can see it. It's called I think it's called the Blink. This is where AI can be quite.
I think you got it upside down, Stephen. I don't know. I can't see anything.
If that's true, that's hilarious. You decide. But anyway, whatever way up this is meant to be. So it's the Blink Mini pan and tilt camera. And this is for indoor use only, right? So this doesn't go outside. And basically, it is a tiny camera. You get these Blink Mini cameras that are standalone, and you could put them on a stand. You could hang them on the wall. You could do what you like with them. But this actually has a pan and tilt stand. And the pan and tilt stand allows you to remotely move the camera left, right, up, and down, which is kind of cool. You can even go like behind. I've never seen this before, but the camera, say you put the camera in the middle of the room, or, it was a big room and you had the middle, you could actually have the camera turn all the way around to look behind itself.
Oh, that's good.
Kind of cool.
Okay.
So
usually
yes,
there's a limited field of view, as in
that's right.
a field of motion, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually 180 degrees and that's it, right?
Yeah.
I'm done. But anyway, this one, and I paid about $50 for it, US.
Bargain. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was on sale. I imagine it probably is. And Blink, if you don't know Blink, now I think it's owned by Amazon.
It is, yeah.
It's not. Is it like Ring, or is it something
Exactly.
they acquired?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Ring?
I believe so. Yeah, Ring started out as an independent company, and then Amazon acquired it. I think Blink was the same, although I'm not sure. But they are both owned by Amazon.
So the first question is, how accessible is it to set up? And I've got to say, I was very impressed with the setup process. Very impressed, actually. The app was entirely accessible. One snag in the whole thing. Okay.
Yes.
So the setup process asks you if you want to create an account, which I did. It then asked me, and I said yes, and that was a mistake. Do you want to link your Amazon and Blink accounts together? And that was the only inaccessible part I found. That was the bit I really struggled to get. It took me a while to get it to work.
Really? Oh, I don't remember that. Okay,
if I said no, I would have probably stayed within the accessible section of the app, which was, basically just use a Blink account.
Did it throw you out to not throw you out, but use its own sort of inbuilt browser to take to the Amazon login, which wasn't correct? Yeah, that can be an issue. How did you get around it? Did you have to? I don't know.
I could use a big sort of screen recognition. In fact, it was screen recognition that got me there in the end.
Yeah.
But it's not, once you get to the form fields, it's fine. The problem is then you have all the pop-ups that go along with it, like the password thing with keychain and all that. So once you get through all that, it's fine. It just takes a little bit of time. You have to kind of turn screen recognition on and off, but you can get there. Or you can just avoid that entirely. And I would probably suggest you do, unless you really want to have them connected together.
There are some benefits, but honestly, for the life of me, cannot remember what they are now to link in your Amazon account. But I'm sure.
I think it might be because obviously there's different plans and stuff you can get with this. I don't really care about recording. I'm just wanting to
live view.
I say that, mind you, I might change my mind down the line. But if I did want to record to the cloud, I could pay for a plan that would do that. You can also buy a module for home. I think it's called the Sync 2 module, and it allows you to do everything local. So you don't have to pay a monthly subscription fee, and also everything's saved locally. So you can basically put a USB stick inside this little module, and it's like a little hard drive in your house, and it will just record everything.
Yep.
So that can work off multiple cameras as well. I don't know how many cameras I'm putting in. Probably just a couple of cameras at the moment, but it's just so I can keep an eye on sort of the public areas of the house, if you like. So this is where it's going to go. But anyway, got it installed, and the setup process is quite simple, right? You're basically, and this is what I did like. When you're going through the setup process, it will tell you that it's found the device. It will find it in the app. You don't have to go off into Wi-Fi or Bluetooth and add it as a separate device and go back into the app like you do with some of them. It does it all, it sees the device in the app. It asks you if you want that one. It asks you then to connect to your Wi-Fi network. You then have to just choose your Wi-Fi network, put in your Wi-Fi credentials. All of that is accessible. And then you give it, I think you have to create a home system name, which is like, is it home or is it office or is it, the house in Spain you've bought, kind of thing. Yeah. And that's it, really. And then once it's connected, you can give it a name. It gives it a name automatically. You can change it later. But every single aspect of it was accessible. I was very impressed. And the one thing that was even cooler about it was when you go into the view, essentially, to watch it, you find the camera. In my case, I just called it living room because I was testing it. Yep. So I just called it living room. And you can double tap on the living room option or the button, and that opens up the view so you can actually see what's going on, and you can then move the camera. And all of that was accessible.
Very cool. Part of me wants to say,
we were trying it, we were testing it. There's a tap to talk button,
which is good
because there's two-way communication here as well, right? So you can hear what's going on from the camera, you can listen. And last night, my wife and I were winding up the dog by standing in the other room and talking to the dog, and
of course,
dog's just looking at it as if to say, "What?" And also, kind of, you could sense that, this is all well and good, but where's my food? I don't really care about any
That's
of this.
dogs. Yes.
Yeah, I don't care about all this nonsense. But yeah, we were able to do that. And again, with VoiceOver, what's kind of cool is you can do the double tap and hold, and that's how you do the tap to talk, and it works really well. The only thing you have to do, I realized, is what it's doing is when you double tap and hold that button, it mutes the incoming audio. And so it silences the phone, so it would sound like the sound has gone dead from the camera.
Yes.
Because it's muting it so that it can then broadcast out what you're saying. Once you let go, without VoiceOver running, it will automatically bring the audio back. But if you don't, you have to let go of the button and then swipe away, and that is when the audio comes back from the camera.
Really? I haven't noticed that. Now, the thing with the Blink app is that it does get a lot of updates. For example, I when I set mine up, I couldn't name them very well. That text field in the Blink app was, I'm going to say, dodgy, because it just was. Sometimes I could type in it, other times I couldn't, and I couldn't delete what I had typed. I actually had to go into the Lady A app, because once you set all these up, and maybe this is why you need the Amazon linking to your account, I could go into my Lady A app and see all the cameras listed there, and I could rename them there, and that worked fine. But yeah, it does get updated quite a lot. I haven't noticed that problem with the hold to speak, but then again, I haven't used it in a long time.
And it's a minor thing, but it's something worth knowing if you're going down that road.
Swipe away. Yeah,
it's one of those things. The audio's not coming back,
As screen reader users, we're so used to finding these little, these quirks, and then finding a workaround. So, yeah. So you're happy with it?
I'm very impressed by it, and it kind of makes me want to fill the entire house with cameras, because I'm like, this is all accessible and it's cool, and of course you can set motion sensors and you can motion detection and all that. So for outside it'd be amazing. I mean, I spent well over, I think we had a local it was a
security
burglary.
firm. Yeah.
No, it was a burglary nearby, a couple of houses away. It's a long, boring story, and it turned out everything was okay in the end. It was a bit of a mistaken adventure. But anyway, I think someone came back from the pub late one night, and everyone thought it was somebody breaking into someone's house. And of course, that was the story that went around the village.
Of course. That wasn't me trying to find your house, was it? It's
like possibly.
It's not like the wrong hotel room story.
That's right.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Please, not that again. But basically, the end result was that everyone started beefing up their home security, and it turned out there was no reason to at all. But anyway, we all spent what we spent, and I got cameras installed to one of those little hard drives that watches and records all the time.
Yeah, a traditional
$1,500. I spent a fortune on it at the time, and my wife was really concerned about security, so we did that. But with these, I mean, I don't know how much a pack of these things cost, but we're talking $40 or $50 for this thing. So I'm imagining a couple of $100 would get you a pack of cameras.
Yeah.
And, and yours are running off AA batteries. Mine's are all wired in through the house.
Yeah, that is a thing as well. You can either have power through a USB. Now, I didn't do that because mine are external, and I didn't want to try and wire up a load of USB cables going outside. But you can also just put 2 AA batteries in, and depending how often you dip into your cameras and live view, they last longer than you would think. I just always think 2 AA batteries, that's going to last like a week.
Exactly.
But, I must have had mine for a good few months now, and the ones I had before, I did have 2 before this, and they lasted a good 6 to 12 months on a set of batteries. They are phenomenal. We should say as well, those traditional security cameras that you had installed there is a difference, because that can have 24-hour recording, right?
Yeah.
You can jump on that hard disk and see what's been going on throughout the day. Now, these sort of cameras work differently, as in they only record when motion is detected, for example, or when you jump into the live view. They're not constantly recording 24/7. So that's how the the power is managed on these.
But in some ways, when you think about it, I mean...
You
want them to be capturing motion. That's the whole point, right? That's the only thing you're interested in, right? I mean, it's not that I want to sit and just stare at a garden all day, all night.
Well, you did on mine. I noticed you did flick around all my security cameras and checked all around my house, which was creepy. I have kicked you out by now. I think the funniest bit was
when I said to you at one point, "What camera is this?" And it said front, I think, and I said, what am I looking at? And you're like, that's the car. I'm like, oh, right, okay, that makes sense. I mean, this would be the kind of thing that I was also thinking of, because I can't do this on the Mac. I can do it on the PC. But I don't know if I can get the app on the PC. this is where like Be My AI or Be My Eyes, I should say, would be quite useful, where you can take a picture and you can send it off.
Oh yeah,
on the PC. I don't know if there's probably a way of doing it on the Mac. I haven't quite.
Well,
figured it out yet.
whenever I'm using the app on my iPhone, and as soon as I turn on live view, I get image description straight away, saying a car in a driveway. So it will give you that basic image description.
Oh, that's
but
cool.
Of course,
I didn't even test that on mine.
People may be thinking, why do you care about security cameras when you're blind? The thing is, when it goes off at 2 a.m., and I hear motion at the back camera, I switch to it immediately and I listen. And just being able to listen out for something, it makes you feel, I don't know, it gives you some comfort, even if you can't see them. Of course, my kids have access to it as well, so they can check it out visually if need be. But just having the ability to listen out, being alerted if something is happening. Of course, with the video doorbells, we're aware of this. I don't use it as a video doorbell. I use it as an intercom so I can answer it from anywhere and see who's at my door, or listen to who's at my door before I answer it. It's very useful. It's very cool. One thing I will say, though, and you mentioned this right at the start, is that I think on the Ring I could give people access. So I could give, my two daughters and Sarah, I could give access to and still be the main admin of the account.
Yeah.
With Blink, you can't do that. I was
looking for that option, yeah.
Yeah, it's not there. In order for anyone else to sign in and use your cameras, you need to give them your email and your password, and they have total control over it. So now I don't care. It's absolutely fine. But there is, just one login, one account. That is a bit of a limitation. If you wanted to give it to someone to check briefly, they've got total control. You can't give them guest access. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
So you've got the Blink doorbell.
Yes.
And it's running on the same app, right?
Yes, absolutely. When I open up the app, I see a list. I can simply swipe through and it just says, front door, front camera, back camera, garage camera, shed camera. Just double tap on the one I want to view. And, the connection is really good as well. It takes about 3 or 4 seconds and then I'm getting a live video feed of everything.
Because I'll be honest, I'm thinking of getting rid of my Ring doorbell. I'm getting so fed up with it, trying to get into, and I have so many connection issues as well.
Yes.
So, sometimes it just will not connect. And, I'm literally bellowing out the front window because there's just no other way to talk to the door.
There's nothing better than just saying to your smart speaker, talk to the front door. That's all I say when the doorbell goes. And it works really well. Now, with the Ring, I had the same problem where it wouldn't connect, or it would take 30 seconds to a minute to connect. But I will say I had the first gen Ring doorbell from years ago. So I think, the Wi-Fi wasn't great and it was battery powered. So there was a lot of issues there that may have been improved just because of old hardware. So I'm not sure how it is now, but I never got on with the Ring app. It just seemed over bloated for what I needed it to be. But I just think, what? It's a very nice price. The affordability of the Blink system is good. The accessibility is good. I am slightly concerned because Amazon and accessibility, it can be great 1 minute and then it can be gone. I'm thinking of Amazon Music. I was using the Lady A app to reinstall or reset up all my Blinks, on my Echo smart speakers the other day. And I came across a few times where I can't get to where I need to go to. I had to turn on screen recognition in this page and turn it off on that page. Not great. So I am slightly, Amazon haven't got a great track record when it comes to upkeeping of accessibility on their apps. But right now, it works really well.
Did you hear the story? There's a rumor going around that Apple are going to bring out a smart doorbell. Have you heard this?
No.
It sounds like absolute nonsense to me.
I'm waiting for a joke. I'm waiting for the punchline.
I know. It sounds like a joke. I mean, they were saying that, it may be that they build it with the ability to integrate Face ID, so that, you could use a smart lock with it. It could open a door for you if it recognizes you. I like the idea. One thing, I suppose the first thing I think is, well, I know it'll be accessible to me. I know that the doorbell will work. And it does seem that they're moving towards, I don't know if this is true with the whole, I don't know, who knows. But they are looking to bring in a HomePod this year. There's this rumor of a HomePod with a screen.
Yes.
Because I think the HomePod line is due for a bit of an update. We know that the HomePod Big, as I call it,
official name.
It's official name, yeah. The second gen is out. I have 2 of them that I haven't even opened yet. That's an absolute disgrace, I know. But
Wow.
we'll get those opened up at some point and get them turned on. But, that's quite cool. I know you love yours.
Yes, absolutely. They sound great.
But I'll be honest, the HomePod idea with a screen doesn't appeal to me at all.
Well, is that because we've had our fingers burnt with the Amazon shows?
Well, that, but also, and look, I know there's no doubt it'll be accessible. That's the thing, right? But I suppose it's just, why would I
care?
Yeah. Why do I want a screen on it? Why would I need a screen on it? Whereas, again, we would all just reach for our phones to do this stuff. So why would we, and I'm talking as blind people, why would we want another screen in our home? It just worries me when we start moving down that road. But what it might open up is this new category of accessories from Apple that are, like smart home accessories, potentially, with, Apple's security built into it. I don't know. I mean, do you think that's even feasible? Do you think that's possible?
Anything is possible with Apple, and you go with Apple for a certain brand quality, right? I suppose you could say that, deservedly or not. That's the perception of Apple. You're paying for a premium product, so why not get into the smart home? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they would be spreading themselves a little thin, but. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm reminded of our talk with Greg, when he's talking about Matter and the amount of devices now that are cross-platform. So it doesn't matter if you're using a Google Nest, an Echo Smart Speaker, or HomeKit, or your iPhone or a HomePod. You can control anything with either device thanks to Matter. So I don't know. I don't know if Apple would move down that route.
I remember Apple stores when they first opened, and one thing that was wonderful about an Apple store back then was they had so many accessories. So many products they had brought into the store. Yeah. So, it was like an electronics store in amongst the Apple store, and it wasn't, they had rows and rows of headphones, speakers, the days, of course, when you had those third-party docking systems for the iPods, the 30-pin dock built, or the 30-pin connector.
Do they not have that anymore in the Apple store? I thought they still had sold sort of partner accessories, don't they? They usually have a lot of Belkin stuff in, and...
Yeah, so chargers, they have very select partners like Mophie and Belkin and companies like that. Yeah, they do have those, and they will have products from like InCase for covers. So certain third-party manufacturers for certain things, but not anywhere near like they used to. And of course, now they have their own headphones. So they have the AirPods, they have the AirPods Beats. Max, they've got the Beats. So that's kind of their products on display. I kind of feel I'd kind of like to see more I'd like to see Apple welcome in more third parties in that way into the stores. Because I think, the one thing about an Apple store is it seems to be the only store that is always full. I remember someone showing a video of the Samsung store next to the Apple store, and the Samsung store was empty. And, the Apple store is absolutely heaving with people. And I just think, I know you're going in to test and try all this latest Mac stuff, but... let's be honest about it. I tend to go in, the first thing I do is go straight to the accessories to see what they've got. And you will find things like they have the Hydrate smart bottle, or they have the Withings or Withings, or however you say it, smart scales and, blood pressure monitors and all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty cool. But I just think they could do more with it. But whether they should make their own or not, I don't know. I
just don't think they'd be interested, to be honest. I think any company or manufacturer that have the MFI certification, so made for iPhone, they should be in there automatically, right? As they're paying for that license anyway. They should be sold in all Apple stores and get some of that exposure.
Well, there was a time when they used to sell HumanWare Braille displays via the Apple Store.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I sort of imagined that, but that did happen.
Mm-hmm. And it was like a really big deal at the time. They were selling them at the time, and that I don't know what happened there. I
wonder how many they sold.
Opportunities,
It's difficult. Well, I mean, we say that,
maybe of course they're not going to sell many, right? And most people probably would go direct to HumanWare or a local provider anyway.
But again, being able to get hands-on with that, even if it was for demo purposes, let's get a Hable in there. Can
you imagine that, going into an Apple store and be able to try out Braille or blind tech?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Okay, let's make that happen. Are you listening, Tim? No. Okay, thank you.
I was going to say who? Tim who? Who?
Tim Apples.
think he's busy with his new friend. Okay, so let's move on.
Yes, quickly.
Coming up, we are going to talk about content creation. We're going to hear from a guy who knows all about it. He's built a very successful YouTube channel and podcast called Primary Tech. We'll talk to Stephen Robles in a minute about that, and we'll hear about his favorite microphone, which I think will surprise a lot of you. But first, if you want to get involved with the show, here's how.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Yeah, keep your comments coming. We love hearing from you, whether it's a voice message on our phone line or whether it's WhatsApp. We love to hear from you. Keep in touch, and we will, of course, get your message on air very soon. Let's talk about content creation. So Marc Aflalo and I, Marc, of course, host of the Your Tech Report podcast, also available in Sirius XM across North America, it's a great podcast, and he and I had a chance to get together and chat with a guy called Stephen Robles. Now, Stephen's a kind of household name for Marc and I because we are so invested in the Riverside platform for the work we do. And, Stephen's a big part of that. He's the face of all the Riverside tutorials and everything else. He talks about all the new features. He is their video content producer over there at Riverside, but he also hosts his own podcast called Primary Tech. Marc and I got a chance to chat to him. He is part of that conversation, which is available in full on the Your Tech Report podcast. We'll play a small section of here on Double Tap, this conversation between Marc and I and Stephen Robles, talking about his career, which got off to a rather unusual start.
I have a varied background. I actually studied music. I have a music degree, trumpet performance, which I like mentioning just because
those videos online somewhere.
It's so random. There are a couple, but so I did a little bit of music after college, and then I got into photography and video for a travel company. So I was doing kind of marketing materials for them, and then I went into live stream production, working with companies doing that. And I wanted to start my own YouTube channel, but I was also looking for a career in the podcasting space. So I started my own YouTube channel during the pandemic, like many people probably did. Didn't do anything with it for a couple of years, and then started to put a little more concerted effort. And podcasting is just a passion of mine. I've been doing it for 14 plus years. I love the medium. And I was making some videos on that and then applied for a job. I saw a job opening at Riverside for a video producer. The fact that I had a few videos already on the channel was a good foot in the door because they could see, okay, he does these things. And so, they really took a chance on me, and I'm so grateful and just love doing it. I make videos for them. And I started focusing on my personal channel at the same time. And that's more tech stuff, shortcuts, iPhone, things like that. And I was able to cross 100K subscribers at the end of last year.
Congrats.
And the Riverside channel, thank you. It's crossing close to 60K right now. Try to get that to 100 this year too.
I have to mention the shortcuts because, again, I saw your face on the Riverside page, and then I started diving in a bit more recently. I'm a big iOS guy. I'm a big smart home fanatic. Ask Stephen. I've gone a little crazy here. My wife hates it. It's a story. But you go pretty deep into iOS shortcuts, and you've taught me a bunch of things by just going through your videos that I got to try out now. I have a list going. I literally have a list that says to do, and half of those are just shortcuts from your videos. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And shortcuts is one of those things where I always loved them personally. And I followed people like Matthew Casanelli and Federico Vittici, really learned from them. And I started making videos about shortcuts that I love, that I think would be useful for people. And then people started asking if I could make shortcuts for them. And over the past year and a half, that has just become an entire community where I created a Circle community, Circle the platform. And we have almost 1,000 people now in there just talking about shortcuts and automation. We have a membership there where people can pay for priority shortcuts requests because I was just getting so many I needed to prioritize. But now, especially if you're trying to get into YouTube, build a YouTube channel, finding that unique niche where you can really set yourself apart and appeal to an audience that's passionate about something. And shortcuts, I didn't think it would be that thing, but it's one of the backbones of my personal YouTube channel because I know I can make a shortcuts video. I have hundreds of requests. And so it's a limitless well of ideas and inspiration. And the great thing is when I pull from that well, which are requests from people, and I put those in videos, it's just a flywheel to say, look, I'm actually listening to your comments and your requests. I'm making those shortcuts, and here you go. You can download them. And it's been a great community to build for the channel.
You talked about some of the inspirations behind those shortcuts that you learned. Did you suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome diving into that on your own channel? Like worrying about, oh, am I doing this right? Are people going to think I'm not doing it well because of these other people that I follow that are doing it so well?
For sure. And there's also just, if you try to make YouTube videos, it's very slow growth at the beginning. And so you have those questions constantly, like, is this even worth it? Is this going to work? But honestly, the names that I mentioned, I'm actually very good friends with Matthew Casanelli. We text all the time, and I've been on his channel to live stream. And it's really great if you can find a niche where you can actually befriend the people in your niche. And the tech YouTube space, there's actually not a lot of territorialness with the creators. And even if we're all making a video about the latest iOS update, there's still ways you can differentiate. And this goes to any topic or niche that you might be a part of, whether it's vlogging, travel, business. Even if you're covering similar topics, just the fact that it's your voice talking about it automatically differentiates it, even if you're saying a lot of the same things. But B, really do something different. Try to take a different approach. And so there are guys out there that cover every iPhone update in detail, cover every little change, and I watch them because they do a great job at it. So I choose not to do that exactly. Instead, I'll try to maybe choose 10 features, dive into them in more of a teaching way. Here's how to use this feature. And just that little different angle can help kind of differentiate and set yourself apart.
And you say, finding your niche is important, but, a lot of people starting out, there was a time where you would say, look, it doesn't matter what hardware you've got. It doesn't matter about the microphone. It doesn't matter about the camera. It doesn't matter about any of that. The content is king or queen. What's the take nowadays? Does it matter more how things look, how things sound?
No, I think we're actually even more democratized in whatever gear you have now, you can start creating, which also, just to plug Riverside has great AI tools like Magic Audio. So if you use the Riverside app on your iPhone, record with the built-in microphone on your iPhone, you can click Magic Audio and it'll sound studio quality with a built-in mic. And again, every phone camera looks amazing compared to video 10 years ago. So I think if you're wanting to get into content creation, you can literally buy zero gear, maybe a $10 tripod for your phone, and then you can start creating. I think even more so, content is king. You look at TikTok and Instagram Reels, the best performing videos, it doesn't matter if it looks blurry or poor quality. Creators have millions of followers. I think of this one streamer called Queso. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a big Twitch streamer. He's got millions of followers. His video quality is horrendous. He streams from a dark room, like a cheap built-in webcam, really terrible quality, but he actually won Creator of the Year recently for a video game awards. And it's like now more than ever, people want authenticity. They want to connect with someone, and they want to know that you are offering real value, no matter the quality of the camera.
It's funny you mention, using your phone. I'm a member, I'm sure you are too, of a lot of different Facebook groups and communities. And I tell people that when people want to start out, I'm like, listen, you have one of the best cameras available to you in your hand every single day. And it's amazing the amount of slack I get from people who say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't recommend that. And I argue it every single time because you know what? It's true. And sometimes you just got to force yourself to start, even if it's going to look bad, to just get over that hump. You can invest in stuff later. You don't have to spend $5,000 to get up and going, whether it's video or audio. There are ways to do it. There are $60 mics on Amazon.
Use the back camera, not the front camera. That's the first. That's
there you go.
And I'll actually say I was just doing a USB microphone video for Riverside. This microphone, the Audio Technica ATR 2100X, it's a $50 USB microphone on Amazon. I used this to podcast for about 5 to 7 years when I was starting out. My co-host, I do a movie podcast, he still uses this mic, and it sounds great. You can spend $50 and sound almost professional. And I'm looking at my YouTube channel right now in my most popular videos. 2 of my top 4 videos, one is about my smart home tour, another is about Apple CarPlay. Over 500,000 views, over 700,000 views on those videos, both shot on my iPhone. So if someone's saying you can't do it with a phone or you need better whatever, I don't think they're really doing content creation. They're not in it.
But it's partly also, I think it's also because, it is about the fact that the bar has raised in terms of the technology we already have. Like you're saying, Mark, you've got, an iPhone in your pocket that's really powerful, that's got an amazing camera in it. But then you can go further than that. You've got these AI tools, like you're saying on Riverside with Magic Audio, and there are other tools, and there are even tools that can enhance video as well, make it look better. You don't really have a world anymore where it's just whatever you see on the phone is it. You can improve on that, and easily.
Yeah, and you could log film a ProRes video on your iPhone, and log is kind of like that, looks desaturated, but it basically means you can apply LUTs and do professional color grading.
Yeah.
I record to an external SSD from my iPhone 16 Pro, and the video looks incredible. And Apple has a bunch of videos like shot on iPhone. There was a music video with The Weeknd and others. You can get incredible video from this device, and so you don't feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars.
And you can hear more of that conversation by subscribing to the Your Tech Report podcast. You can find out more at yourtechreport.com, or you can subscribe on podcast and you'll find it on YouTube as well. So the good news is, Shaun, we don't have to spend an absolute fortune. We have the gear already.
It's so true, though. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, though. You could argue that the quality of the, let's say more affordable end of microphones and even cameras has risen. But also the services that we have available. There is Riverside, obviously, that we use. There's also CleanFeed, which we used in the past for audio recording, which is very good as well. There's so many different services out there to actually just get you started. And as Marc said as well, just record the content. The content will always sort of play the major role here.
I want to just mention about Riverside because, I have to be brutally honest here that, it is a platform that does need a bit of accessibility work. I am working with them on that.
Yes.
And I hope that we'll be able to improve things. They are very keen to move fast over there at Riverside and continually add new and updated features. And that sometimes means that they tinker a lot with the interface. So they are making a lot of changes at the minute. But there are a lot of other accessible options out there. So you mentioned CleanFeed. And that is definitely one. The other one I should mention is StreamYard. And that's actually pretty impressive these days because it's getting better and better all the time and becoming more accessible as well. Lots of blind people I know who are using that platform to host events like Zoom or Teams events. Essentially what you're doing is you're using a platform like that to make your stream look more professional, right? Because it's not just about making podcasts. Sometimes you might, for example, want to make your Zoom video or your Zoom presentation look better. So you might want to use a tool like that so that when you're bringing someone up beside you on the screen, maybe you have a particular brand or a particular color or a particular style of your business or whatever it might be. If you work for a company, even if it's a small company, they might want to just look a certain way when they're doing these things. You can create all that. You can't really do that in Zoom or Teams on its own. It's just receiving a video feed and, that's usually just your camera. But you can enhance it. You can make it look better. I did a presentation using a piece of software like this, and someone said it was like watching a movie because suddenly there was transitions and there was things going on and it was all very fancy. And they're like, what on earth is going on? But you can increase the quality of your work. Now, of course, this is not for everyone. And for blind people, there are going to be obvious challenges there. Whenever you involve video, there's always going to be challenges. I mean, I'm trying to figure out at the minute the sort of fully accessible, from the blind person perspective, totally blind perspective, video editing option.
Yes.
The one I'm looking at the minute is Clipchamp. Now, interestingly, we were talking the other day about Microsoft and the whole question mark around Microsoft 365. As part of that 365 plan, I did see in the list of benefits to having the new 365 with the new increased pricing is Clipchamp editing and sort of cloud editing that goes with it. And that was quite interesting. I must investigate that more. But there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts to use something like Clipchamp. And if you don't know what that is a free video editor built into Windows in the same way that iMovie is built into the Mac.
It's so strange. I didn't know what that was for the longest time.
I know. I never heard it. It doesn't even make sense, Clipchamp, does it? It's not a great
I was
name.
mishearing it as well through NVDA. I thought it was something about monkeys, chimp something.
It's a game. Like Solitaire. Yeah,
exactly.
Get rid of it.
But it is that. And I did play with it. And I must say I had more success with Narrator than I did with any third-party screen reader. But that was a good couple of years ago. This may have, they've done a lot of work since then. So, yeah, I'd like to try that again.
And, some might ask, and a lot do, a lot ask me, why are you doing a show for blind people on YouTube? And it's a fair question, right? I think it's a fair question because there's that assumption that, look, if you're talking to blind people, the platform would be podcast, would be audio.
Yeah.
I get that view. I do understand that. However, I think you have to look outside your own borders. We can sometimes get trapped. I've said this many times. You can get trapped inside this bubble where you're talking, so hyper-focusing your content to one particular group of people. But, do you want that content to grow? And if you want the content to grow, then you have to allow that conversation to grow outside of that bubble. And so in our case, putting the show on YouTube allows low vision people who are family members, who would be perhaps more comfortable watching content as opposed to listening to a podcast. Equally, there are many people who prefer to listen to a podcast than watch a podcast, right? It's very much individual. But if you're not, well, exactly. But if you're not on the platform, you might not get discovered. And it would be like saying, well, I'm only going to be on Spotify because, my listeners only listen on Spotify. Okay, that might be the case. But actually, if you did go onto Apple Podcasts and you did go onto other platforms, perhaps you might get a bigger following.
Yeah, you extend your reach.
Look, if you're not there, you're definitely not going to get following increase, right?
Well, I've had people say to me before, when I say I've watched it on YouTube, oh, you use YouTube, I said, well, yeah, of course I do. YouTube's a massive platform. It's incredibly useful as a resource. I look it up all the time on, how to do something. It's fantastic. Now, sometimes, of course, it's not being able to see the screen is a real issue.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not described enough. But it's still a massive platform, and you can't ignore that.
And that's, I think, the key. So, yes, it's always going to be a challenge if you're totally blind to create content. If you live alone or you are alone and you want to create content using YouTube, it is challenging. There are some tools. We went through all this in a YouTube video we did a while back. We went through these various tools. Like, for example, a simple one would be, using JAWS and the ability to tell whether or not you're centered on camera. That would be really useful to use. Face and View is that feature. On the Mac, there's Centered Head, which does similar.
Yeah. Be My Eyes on Windows has that built in as well.
Be My Eyes has it. So if you don't use JAWS, of course, you have an option there. And I think that's the really cool thing. There are ways to make sure that when you're recording, you're in the right place. And I just think it's important to get the content out there. Now, look, of course, no one. If anyone tells you you're going to jump to 100,000 subscribers like Stephen Robles there overnight, of course, he would be the first to tell you that's nonsense. It takes time. He said himself, it takes a long time to grow these things. Some might never work. Some might work. Your measure of success is down to what you put in to some degree, right? And also, getting out there to more platforms. What I'm realizing is, especially from our point of view, what we do, we have to be on every platform. We have to be available. We can't just say we're only going to be available on this platform because that's just ridiculous. That's not where everyone is. So, there's not one place where all blind people are. I know there's people out there who might tell you that's the case, but there's just not, it's not true. Look, I know X is a toxic place. And I know why it's a toxic place, and it's probably an even more toxic place now. I'm tending to avoid it more these days. But I do think it's important to post there because there are people who follow me on that platform who do appreciate the content. I know that because I get response. So when I post something, I do get a response. So it's not a case of there's no one out there. And if I was getting nothing back, I would probably say, okay, this is just a cesspit now, and that's the end of it. But it's not entirely a cesspit. There are some edges around the cesspit where nice people sit.
Stop saying cesspit. Yeah, no, absolutely. Most social media is the same.
Yes.
I was doom scrolling through Facebook Watch the other day, and all of a sudden, there's me talking to myself. It was, there was
freaky,
a clip,
isn't it?
There was a clip from Double Tap on there. So, like you say, it's just about trying to grow and reach more people, which is important, right? If you're taking the time to create the content, you want people to see it. So,
and also, don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to reach out to people, friends or family.
Of course, yeah.
Because look, I'll be honest. There's no way we could do this entirely ourselves. I mean, as much as I can do basic editing, but the problem is I can only really do basic stuff. If it's, put it this way, color control or knowing if a camera's even in focus, I've got no idea, right? So things like that I can't tell. I can I can basically make out a head on the screen if it's silhouetted enough.
Yeah.
That is a way I can sort of tell if someone's in frame, although I have made mistakes in that in the past. There was an occasion where I did an interview with someone, they were upside down the whole interview. That was amusing. Thankfully, that could be fixed in post. But I will say one thing: I knew they were center, so
it was fine.
They were centered. They were upside down. So the vision takes you as far as I can push it, I guess. So I'm not ashamed to say that I have people who are involved in doing the social media creation of the stuff we do, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that because look, we're all dependent on each other to some degree. So I think that's a really cool thing. I want to ask you about the microphone though, because were you surprised when he told you what his favorite mic was? For 5 years he used it.
Yeah, you know what? No, I wasn't. I think Audio-Technica, particularly that one, is absolutely amazing. Before that was the 2100 without the letter X at the end, because as we all know, letter X makes everything cooler.
Yes.
But I had the Audio-Technica ATR 2100 that's what I started with. And I was blown away. I thought the quality was absolutely amazing. And I did buy the 2100X as well. And although this isn't the one I'm using right now to record on here, this is, what is it, a Shure SM7B?
Yeah.
I'm using now. But I still have the Audio-Technica set up on my other laptop. And actually, we used it the other day when we were testing something out. And you said the quality was good enough. We could record, if need be, on my second system using that. I think it's an amazing microphone.
Yeah, basically, if you fall and break your leg again, we've got a decent setup.
I've got no out. I'm recording if I like it or not.
From shot of the shed to shot of the bed. Back to that again. Good night. I don't want to go back to those dark days.
No.
But yeah, I think the tools that are available to us now are much lower cost. I mean, like we say, the phone. It's interesting because when you hear content creators like that say, "Oh, just use your phone," it's kind of cool because we can also say as blind people, yeah, well, we actually can. In some ways, it's easier. Because if someone gives me a DSLR camera, and I do have DSLR cameras because we used to do the TV show, I have all these fancy cameras here, and if I can use them, I will. But, the problem is I always need someone to help me use it. If it goes wrong, I need someone to get eyes on it to fix it because I can't. So, for me, there's a lot of challenges. Now, I know there's low vision people out there. I think about James Rath immediately. He comes to mind.
Amazing creator, yeah.
And actually, the camera allows him to do great things because he can see so much through the viewfinder and do and take pictures and do video. It actually enables him because he's essentially using that vision in a really productive way.
Yeah, the camera enhances the vision that he's got.
Exactly, it gives him access to things. There's all kinds of tools and photography.
But I think the important thing is that no matter what your level of vision, it is all doable, right? And again, a lot of this is all done with asking for help, or at least looking into it a little bit more. It's all doable. In the case of using your phone to create content, I think the big deal there, and I think Stephen mentioned it, is a tripod, right? For me, it's about once that camera is positioned and I know where I'm sitting, I'm in center. It's fine. And it's these things that most, sighted creators wouldn't have to think about. But as, visually impaired creators, we do need to think about these things. But it's more than doable. And in some cases, if you need sighted assistance, you need sighted assistance. There's no guilt in that whatsoever.
Yeah. And again, with Be My Eyes on the computer, Ira, on the desktop, there are ways that you can make sure that, your camera's facing the right way, that everything looks good, your background is tidy. All those things that you want to know. There's lots of things you got to think about, right? Because, I think about it every day. And I'm sure as I sit here now, I'm thinking, did I move that thing that was on the background? It's like, did I move that coffee cup? I don't know.
You are going to make those mistakes as well. And you can't just give up or, kick yourself. You just got to laugh about it and say, yeah, I'll try and remember that in future. We still make mistakes every single day, so don't worry about it.
We should say as well, because this is one of the kind of other reasons why Greg Hayes wanted to come on with us this week, because he bought one of those microphones. He bought one of the ATR.
That's right, yeah, for Christmas, yes.
Yeah. And he said, what I want to do is I want to test it out. So he had that plugged in to his phone via USB-C. One of the new benefits, of course, many benefits of having one of the new phones with USB-C is that you can plug these things directly in. He was using that microphone. So the audio quality was excellent. The video quality was excellent. And that was it. It was simple as that. So, and of course, like when here at Double Tap, We use Riverside, but we also use Zoom. And, if you're using Zoom on the phone, then it's easy, right? Because you can connect up, you can choose your, back camera, front camera, you can set yourself up. Having that tripod is always good, because the key thing is, if you're joining a meeting, especially if you're joining an interview or a podcast, I always say to people, if you're using a laptop, you've got a couple of books or a couple of boxes lying around, something you can put the laptop up on.
Yes.
Get it up, because you don't want it to be sitting down on the ground where you're just looking up at you. That's not a great view, and it's really important to think about these things. And it's funny, so many blind people are now coming around to that way of thinking.
Yeah, there's so many blind creators out there.
Well, I've realized it from people who I connect with on the show now. Before, if I had said 2 years ago, I think even 2 years ago, if I had said, hey, look, we're doing the show on YouTube, could you turn your camera on? I'd get more resistance. I get less resistance now than ever. People realize, look, this is multimedia now. That's the world we live in. And of course, with Zoom meetings and everything, people are expected to be on camera. That's a whole debate about whether or not people should have their cameras on or not. That's another story for another day.
Of course.
But no, I think it's interesting. Content is always king, though, right? Content is the key. You got to think about what your story is, what you're trying to tell, what you're trying to do, whether it's a tech review, whether it's telling a story, to whatever it might be, interviewing people. You got to think what your niche is, because to cut through and be successful, you have to have a niche. You have to have something that can attract an audience. And, what you're trying to do, I think, is tell a narrative to an audience who, in our case, a very bespoke audience of blind people, but actually explain things in a way that someone who's sighted, who knows nothing about our world, can understand. And that is how you achieve, I think, growth. It's partly why we've done pretty well, but I think it's why others do the same. You have to be open to as many people as possible and as many platforms as possible. Look, we're out of time. It was a great chat today, though. Really enjoyed that. Thanks to Stephen Robles for coming on. Check out your tech report for more on the interview. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.